Okay, good morning and welcome to the Used Oil Payment Program update from CalRecycle. We've got about 60 people on the line here and we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Calvin Young. I'm the grant supervisor for the program and just kind of starting things off here since it's a little difficult to go around and introduce 60 or so people on the phone. We'll just go ahead and bypass that part at this point. I would like to give recognition to just a few of the key people that have been involved in this program. And the biggest kudos would go to Lori Gerard, who has kind of been the champion of this whole effort here, along with Marissa Luna, Michelle Martin, and others in our IT group, and many other staff that have been involved in many other aspects. With that, let's go ahead and get started. It's not set up for slideshow. Okay, and through our process here, because we have so many people that are on the webinar, we will not be using an audio back and forth chat. We will be utilizing the chat mode in the webinar to ask questions. Excuse me. We'll have two times for questions. One will be after the general overall presentation, and then we will move into the actual online application itself and then have question and answers after that period as well. Just kind of as a by way of an overview, the program itself was authorized in Senate Bill 546. That, and we consider fiscal year 10-11 to be a kind of a transitional year, as many of you are still dealing with the used oil block grants and working through those. The budgeted funding level for this next fiscal year is, at this point, proposed to be $11 million. The same that was proposed in the January governor's budget is unchanged in the May revise, and we anticipate that is what the final figures will be. It's a little different than the used oil block grant program in that rather than getting an advance or being on a reimbursement basis, we will be providing a single payment in April of 2011 or October of 2010 if you're eligible, and we'll go over that here in a few minutes. And it has a 24-month term as opposed to the previous typical 36-month for the used oil block grant. And one of the things that I know is going to make a lot of people out there really happy is there will be no tracking and reporting of interest earned on these payments. One of the other big changes is that we are encouraged in the legislation that about 10% of the monies be spent on oil filter collection and recycling. The application itself, we are expecting to be live this afternoon, possibly tomorrow morning, and we'll get more of that from Marissa Luna here in a little bit. Applications can be submitted anytime from then up until June 30th at 3 p.m. And all of our new and improved websites, web pages related to the program are up and live. So feel free to go to the used oil homepage, and then you'll be able to, or anything on the grants and loans, and you'll be able to find the oil payment program sites after that. What's changed and what hasn't changed? Well, first off, what hasn't changed is the program intent. We're still looking at assisting in the development and maintenance of used oil and oil filter collection programs and all of the activities that go on with that. To be eligible for the oil payment program is the same as was for the previous block grant program. In other words, you have to have one certified collection center per 100,000 residents, or provide a monthly curbside collection program. Additionally, keep in mind that you also have to have a public education component that informs the public of various used oil recycling opportunities. Typically, it'll be something with your 800 number or advertising when and where folks can take their recycled oil, their used oil. And keep in mind that, yes, even though we're providing this as a single payment out there, You're still and we're not requiring you to submit a lot of documentation with it. You're still required to maintain your records for 3 years, even after the end of the term. Expenditure for the funds, you'll notice an awful lot of similarities between the previous block grant program and this one regarding what is eligible and what is not eligible. So what's different? In the past, we had 32 pages of procedures and requirements, terms and conditions, and all sorts of fun stuff. Now, we're looking at a 10-page guideline. And instead of submitting a paper application, we now have submission of the online application constitutes the agreement. Documentation, yes, you still have to maintain your records, invoices, etc., but you don't have to send it to us. You still have to keep it in your oil payment program file at your local jurisdiction. Again, programmatically, as I mentioned, we're trying to encourage 10% of your expenditures be for used oil filter collection and recycling. What we hope to get out of all of this is a shift in focus from the grant managers from what they've been, which is very focused on documentation and submitting the right forms and dotting I's and crossing T's, and getting them to provide more technical assistance and less on the administrative side of the house. Again, timelines that we're looking at here, the application process, cross fingers, should be up sometime this afternoon, if not then bright and early in the morning. And you'll have until June 30th at 3 p.m. to submit your application. We're looking at July 30th for any supporting documentations to come to CalRecycle. Those would be your resolutions, letters of authorization, delegation, so on and so forth. Your annual reports are due on August 15th, the same as they have been in the past. The two important dates to remember here also are for those that are eligible for an early payment, you'll receive that in October of this year. For everybody else, you'll receive your payment in April of next year. You may have noticed we're using a little bit of different terms on some of these things, and I want to just kind of go over some of these things. So as you hear them either through the presentation or later on in talking to your representative here at CalRecycle, we'll have a common terminology. The new program is called the Used Oil Payment Program, or OPP. What used to be your grant manager is now your program advisor. What used to be a grantee is now a payment recipient. And what used to be reimbursements or advances are now considered payments or awards. The oil payment program online is kind of a combination of the old paper-based application as well as the BGR, or the block grant reporting system, online. So that will now encompass both of those items. Now we're going to be switching over to the actual guidelines document to pull this up here. Okay. And don't be worried, I'm not going to go over it line by line. I'm just going to kind of go over some of the high points here that folks have mentioned in the past, so we can kind of go over those. Again, eligibility is much the same as it was before. No major changes there. You're still required for, wait one. You're still required to get a web pass, and I think everybody that is involved with the block grant program is familiar with the web pass. If not, there's information here, as well as you're going to be getting an email later on today reminding you about that. The resolutions and other documentation, a little bit different in that this particular year we do have to have brand new documentation from everybody. That means even if you've submitted a resolution in the past, you must submit a new resolution. That, among other things, is because we have a brand new name to the program. Now, one of the things that we are able to do, which is a significant change, is we are able to make this an until rescinded resolution. In other words, in the past it used to be a 1-year or a 5-year resolution. Now the resolution from your jurisdiction, because this is considered a payment and not a grant per se, it would be open-ended or until rescinded, so there is no ending date on this. So that's in response to a lot of suggestions from jurisdictions. For regional applications, the lead still has to have a resolution or a letter of commitment. And that would typically be if, like, you're a joint powers authority or what have you. Something that's a little bit different is the letter of authorization from each of the regional participants. We do require one of those each year. So that's just to make sure that everybody still wants to be in the regional application. And as we've mentioned before, the term of the program is 24 months. Makes a little bit of a change for folks. We do ask that you spend your block grant. There was a question whether you spend your block grant dollars or your OPP money first. We're asking that you spend your block grant dollars first. Under the term also, in order to be sensitive to some of the jurisdictions that receive smaller amounts and may be saving up for a significant equipment expenditure or whatever, we will also allow a 6-month extension on a case-by-case basis. And that will enable jurisdictions that, again, are saving up for a big equipment purchase or something to basically span 3 fiscal years of funding. You'll notice that where you used to be required to get prior approval from the Waste Board, or now CalRecycle, for your expenditures, you no longer have to do that. We're basically giving a lot of flexibility along with accountability to the jurisdictions. So you pretty much have the guidelines as far as what is broadly eligible. If you are looking for a little bit of comfort, you can still contact your program advisor for advice. But we tried to make the eligible cost rather broad and provide a lot of flexibility to the local jurisdictions. The whole idea behind this was basically that the money is for program purposes. We're all big boys and girls. Spend it the right way. And we don't need to be checking everything as far as dotting I's and crossing T's. To provide a little guidance and a little bit of structure, though, we have had lots of jurisdictions say, yeah, but we do want some guidance as far as what's in and what's out. So that's why we included basically the eligible and ineligible program costs. And again, you'll notice an awful lot of similarities between the old block grant and the new oil payment program. Publicity and education requirements. Again, very similar to what you had before. Some noticeable differences are that if something in the past had multiple funding to it, let's say maybe you were doing something for your household hazardous waste, and of the 20 things mentioned on the ad or the brochure was used oil and used oil filter. Well, in the past, it was kind of a judgment call. Well, do you get reimbursed 10%, 20%, 50%? We just went to a standard thing to provide guidance out there. If you're talking about used oil and oil filter collection, and it's mentioned, and among other things, go ahead and claim 50%. If it's more than half of the text or image is related to used oil and oil filter recycling, you can go ahead and claim 100%. And that's kind of at the request of jurisdictions that wanted a little additional guidance on that. One of the other things that had been requested is, can we make the acknowledgement a little more brief? So we give you a choice. You can either say funded by the Department of Resources, Recycling and Recovery, CalRecycle, or you can just say funded by CalRecycle. Down under the copyright material, again, we've revised all this. We've revised our Spanish translations as well. And clarification that press releases are not subject to copyright language requirements. Records retention is, again, same as it has been in the past. You got to hang on to the paperwork for at least 3 years afterwards. The biggest difference is you don't necessarily have to use our forms. If you have your internal documentation, your own forms for travel, your own forms for payroll and what have you, that's fine. Just retain those for possible review or audit later on, but you don't have to put it on our forms. If you prefer to, you can, but you don't have to. The annual reporting is indeed a requirement, just as it has been in the past with the Used Oil Block Grant Program. August 15th is the same. Of course, if it falls on a weekend, we'll give you till the following Monday. One of the things that's, in a sense, similar to the Used Oil Block Grant Program is, in the Block Grant Program, you received reimbursement for your grant that you spent money on, and if you didn't fully expend your grant, you didn't get the whole amount. Similar with the oil payment program, if you don't use all the money that are provided to you, at the end of 2 years, you have to give it back. Something tells me, though, that there's not going to be a whole lot of that coming back to us. So the whole intent is for you guys to use that and to use it wisely. If there's any oddball situation or an exception that may be necessary, we do have the flexibility to consider those on a case-by-case basis. And the termination language is pretty much the same as we've had in the past. If a recipient decides that they want to no longer participate in the program, they can withdraw just as they've had in the past. Okay, we're getting near the end of the guidelines, so for those that are interested and have some questions that they want to ask, feel free to start opening up the chat dialog box there in your webinar and start composing the questions. Again, this is the definition portion, and it pretty much goes over the various definitions in the program. So at this point, I'll go ahead and open it up to any questions, first off in our live audience here with the assembled multitudes. And not a lot here right now for that. Okay. Online, what do we have? When can we start uploading the resolutions and letters of designation? Those can be uploaded the same time you do your application. And again, we anticipate that the oil payment program online process should be up and live this afternoon or possibly tomorrow morning. My resolution goes to council on July 28th. Can we submit the resolution thereafter? Well, if it goes on the 28th, then yes, you can submit that by July 30th, and we're all good. If there's a situation where, because we realize a lot of councils and Board of Soups are dealing with budget issues in June or may go dark during the summertime, we understand that. If there is an absolute time constraint that you're not able to make the July 30th deadline for all other documentation, go ahead and be submitting your application by June 30. Just let your program advisor know, and we'll ask that you request an extension, and then we'll provide appropriate, consideration of the extension request. We do have a request here from the audience.
Hi, Steve Harriman with the City of Rancho Cordova. Earlier in the presentation, there was a slide about using a portion of the funding for oil filters, and the word there was should, and I just wanted to verify that that is a should and not a shall.
Correct.
Okay.
Look, just in case it wasn't able to hear it as well out there, the question on the 10% for used oil filter collection and recycling is a should and an encouraged, not a shall. Back to the resolution. Is a letter of authorization or designation needed also? Typically, you will need a letter of designation because, or perhaps not, depends on your jurisdiction. The resolution will typically identify a position within the jurisdiction, maybe a city manager or public works director, and you may want to also have that city manager or public works director may also want to have somebody else authorized to submit paperwork, make any changes, or whatever the case may be. So you may also want to consider that there. Resolution open-ended, but participating jurisdictions may change annually. Yeah, if the resolution needs to change for one reason or another, you can submit a resolution the next year or whatever year the change occurs. But we don't, with an open-ended one or an until rescinded, you don't have to submit a new resolution every year, and that's the key thing. But surely, if things change in your jurisdiction, if change things with participants, then yeah, you may want to change the resolution as well.
Hi, this is Lori Gerard. I just want to add, if the only change is your participants, when you develop your resolution, if you list your participants in an attachment and not in the body of the resolution, then you're able to update the participants without having to undo your resolution or do a new resolution.
Thank you. Our city has decided to participate in a regional program with the county. Would we still have to have our city council adopt a resolution, or would a letter of designation be sufficient? Actually, I believe it's a letter of authorization. And that would typically come from your executive officer, your city manager or something, saying, yes, county, we want to participate with you and have you administer the program for us. So no, that would not need to go to your council. Do we follow the new rules on our old block grants? No. Well, yes and no. Keep in mind, the old block grants are governed by those procedures and requirements, terms and conditions. The guidelines are for the new oil payment program. And while there are an awful lot of similarities, there are differences. So for your old block grant, you're still bound by your old procedures and requirements, terms and conditions. Does the 24-month timeline begin when a city receives payment? That would be too easy. No, the 24-month period begins with the July 1st of the new fiscal year. So these do run in a fiscal year blocks. So you would have this first oil payment program technically is from July 1st of 2010 to June 30th of 2012. Is there a sample resolution provided online? Our sample resolutions and other documents are indeed up and online at this point. Yes. As we did in the UBG program, can we name more than one person to be designee in the letter of designation? Yes, absolutely. In fact, I would suggest that because you never know when somebody's either going to get sick or retire or leave or what have you. Does the resolution also have to be submitted by June 30th? Yes. Pardon me, not by June 30th, July 30th. The application has to be submitted by June 30th, and it does have a spot on it for saying that the resolution and other stuff will be coming along. Just as an additional clarification, for those jurisdictions, and again, we want all documentation by July 30th. If there's some reason, again, perhaps the council not meeting or what have you by then, and you absolutely can't, we do require that a draft resolution be uploaded by July 30th, along with the final one a little bit later. And again, in anything that goes past the July 30th date, you need to contact your program advisor for basically approval for an exception. What determines eligibility to receive payment in October 2010 versus April of 2011? Did I have that? It's in the guidelines, I believe. That one? Okay. Okay, very good. Thank you. Under the terms, and I'm trying to highlight this here. Under the terms and payments, basically what we're doing is saying if you need the money earlier, you can get the money earlier. So what it needs to be is the jurisdiction must demonstrate that other funds are not available. So if you have open UBG 13, 14, 15s, then you would not be eligible to receive the payment in October. If you have spent your monies, then you would be eligible for the October payment. The same would hold true in subsequent years. For the second year, let's say, of the OPP, if you had spent all of your block grant monies and your oil payment program monies, then you would be eligible for the payment in October as opposed to April. That was part of a compromise that we reached with our accounting folks to consider this more of partial reimbursement and partial advance as opposed to all of it being in advance. And again, part of what we were trying to accomplish with this was not requiring the tracking and reporting of interest earned on these payments. So this was part of our negotiation to work that out. So the city manager designates another. Is this person then the signature authority, or is it the city manager? The city manager, if they could both be considered basically the signature authority. And I think Marissa may cover this a little bit in hers as well. So the question is, if the city manager designates somebody else, basically, who's the signature authority, or is it both? And in this particular case, if you designate somebody else, it would be both. So they would both have equal ability to sign various things. Does the application differ from prior years? And I will interpret that to be, does the application differ for the oil payment program differ from the used oil block grant program? There is amazing similarities between the two. However, there are some discrete differences having to do primarily with certification that yes, indeed, you're eligible and what have you. So it's very much similar, and again, Marissa will go over much more detail on the application itself. Is the city the recipient? We have an overlapping sanitary district that manages solid waste. It depends on whoever's basically been the grantee in the past would typically be the same person, same entity. I'm not aware. I think we might have one sanitary district in the whole program, but typically whoever was the applicant and received the grant monies in the past would be the same entity. Will the application provide a checkbox for payment in October? Yes. And again, that will be subject to, just as it has been in the past, requesting in advance. But again, it's subject to, do you have other monies that are available? For budgeting purposes, will we be notified in advance of the start of a new fiscal year, the amount that we should expect from the OPP? Well, it depends, frankly. We can't state with absolute certainty until our own state budget is signed. And we all know how that's been sometimes. At this point, again, we are planning and budgeting. The January governor's budget came out with $11 million for the program. The May revise had the same dollar amount. We're anticipating the final adopted budget will indeed be for the $11 million. For budgeting purposes, what you can basically do is take the amount that you had received for your used oil block grant 14 cycle, assuming you received one at that point, and it'll be roughly the same. It actually be a little bit more, but you can figure roughly the same for budgeting purposes as what you received for your used oil block grant 14 cycle. If oil payment program is July 1st, 2010 and funding isn't received till April 11, then jurisdictions must use their own monies and then be reimbursed, correct? Correct. And again, that was part of our negotiation with not having to track all of this. If we had done it as just a single payment in October that would then be outstanding for the better part of 2 years, we would have been required to track interest and report that. And we know that that has been a very, very hot point for our jurisdictions. We haven't expended any funds from the UBG 14 or 15. Will we still receive an OPP 1? Yes, you will. And we would encourage you to use your 14 and 15 sooner rather than later. And again, we want folks to use the block grant monies really before they start really pushing too much on the OPP funds. What this may enable you to do is maybe actually look at some of those items that you had been putting off for a while. Now you can maybe go to your budgetary authorities and say, hey, we need to spend these monies by X date, and then budget accordingly. So maybe there's some larger projects or some equipment expenditures that you were looking to do. This might be an opportunity. Do we have any other questions? Okay. At this point, I will go ahead and we'll have a moment or two for transition. I will turn it over to Marissa Luna, who will be covering the application itself, and then we'll have a question and answer period at the end of that. If there's anything that has slipped your mind or you think about it 5 minutes from now, you can ask that also at the end of the application period too. Thank you very much.
Okay, good morning. I'll be giving an overview of the online application and show you some examples of editing and how to upload a document. I will answer questions at the end of my presentation. This is the login page, which is a secure website. Prior to the release of the application, grantees who have access to the block grant reporting system will automatically receive access to this secure website. This is where you log into the oil payment program system. There will be instructions regarding the web pass and receiving access to the secure site on new program web pages. We'll quickly show you how to get to those pages. This is the CalRecycle home web page, and on the left-hand side there's navigation links, and click on grants and loans. And then you can scroll down to the payment program section. This is the used oil payment program homepage, which has general information, and then there's a section that's cycle specific. So if you click on that bookmark, it takes you down to that section, and here's the link for this fiscal year's information. So this page will contain the link to the secure site. There's information about how to obtain a web pass, and then there's a timeline for you also towards the bottom of the page. So let's go back to the login page, and we're going to log in using our web pass. So CalRecycle staff will email existing used oil block grantees with a notice of funds available to let you know when the application is available. Applicants need their web pass in order to log into the system. So I'll be using Lake County as an example. This is only an example. Changes I make to this application are not valid and will be erased prior to the system going live. The county will have to complete and submit a new application to be eligible for the used oil payment program. After you log in, you'll find a summary of submitted items, which could include your reports for your used oil block grant. You'll need to click on Applications on the left-hand side of the page. To start a new application, click on the Add Application button. So I've already started the application, so it's listed in the table. You'll be able to begin an application, save it, log out, and log back in later to complete it, as long as it's before the application due date. So when you begin your application, you'll be taken to the Program Requirements tab. This section of the application not only contains program requirements, but also includes a snapshot of the entire application. To the right are tabs for each section of the application. General instructions for each section will be at the top of the page. Application information contains the status of the application, which will change once you submit the application, and you will be able to see status updates as CalRecycle reviews your submitted application. When you submit the application, the date of submittal will appear here. Due dates for application submittal and document due dates for items like the resolution are here as reminders. I have completed the program requirements section, which asks you about your used oil collection program and public education. You must accept the oil payment program provisions, and there is a link to the program guidelines for you to review prior to checking the box. Lastly is the payment section. The standard April payment will be pre-selected. You must manually choose the October payment option after you determine if you meet the requirements. All of the program requirements must be completed in order to save the application. To the right of the page is an application checklist. As you complete each section, the red unchecked symbol will become a red check. As you can see, the program requirements have been completed, so there is a green check. Each item listed also has a help feature. If you hover over the question box with your cursor, you see the help message. Items that are required by the application due date are shown with 1 asterisk. Documents that are required by the document due date are shown with 2. The bottom right side of the screen contains summary tables of other application sections. If you had a used oil block grant last year, the contacts table will be present and list existing contacts in our system. The other tables will not be present when you first log in and will appear as you complete each section. You can use the links in the tables or the tabs at the top to navigate to the different sections of the application. If we go back to the application checklist, you can see that next on the list is to enter or validate the contacts. So let's click on the Contacts tab. In order to complete your application, you will have to validate that each contact listed is correct. You'll be able to add new contacts or delete old ones if needed. Since I had a UBG 15 grant, my previous contacts are listed. To validate a contact, click on the contact name. Each contact has a details page that contains all of their contact information. This is where you can edit or validate their information. Terry was the primary contact on the UBG grant, therefore she shows as the primary contact in my application. To validate this information is still correct, I will click on the Edit tab. There are no changes needed to this contact, so I will check the box that says contact information is up to date and save. Please note that you can only have one primary contact and one secondary contact. To edit or validate the next contact, either click on the back button or on the Contacts tab. Now I have to click on the next contact name to validate their information. There are no changes needed to this contact as well, so I'll edit and click the box that says contact information is up to date and save. I can either proceed by clicking on the next tab, which is address, or I can go back to the program requirements page to make sure that that section is complete. Let's go back to the program requirements page. As you can see, there are now green checks next to the Enter, Validate, Primary Contact Information, and Signature Authority. Next on the list is Enter Physical and Payment Address. Click on the Address tab to add the required information. This page contains a listing of all addresses. Since we've already updated the contacts, their addresses are listed on this page. You must add a physical and a payment address. Please note that you cannot list a PO box in the physical address section. Click on the Add Address button to begin. In my case, the physical address and the payment address are the same. So I'm going to hold the Control button and select Physical and Payment Address. Then complete the rest of the required fields. This link will help you find your Assembly and Senate districts. And you do your search based on your physical address. So now you can go back to the application and add those. And we'll hit Save. If you're submitting a regional application, you must go to the Participating Jurisdictions tab. I've already selected 2 participating jurisdictions. I completed this section by clicking the Edit button. Then I found the participants in the All Participating Jurisdictions list and used the arrows to move the participant's name to the Selected Participating Jurisdiction section. To unselect a participant, use the arrows to move them back to the list on the right. Now let's move on to the Documents tab. The application certification is the only document that is required to be submitted by the application due date. Resolutions, letters of authority, and letters of designation must be uploaded by the document due date. Since I had some of my required documentation, I've added them to the application already. As you can see, I have a resolution for the lead and 2 letters of authorization for the participants. I will show you how to upload a document in a moment. But first, let's go back to the program requirements to see if we've completed our application. According to the application checklist, we've completed all required sections for submittal, except for print, sign, and upload application certification. If you scroll to the bottom of this page, you will see that the print application certification button has appeared. You will click on this button to view and save the application certification. This is an example of the application certification. It contains a summary of all the sections of the application, certification language, and a place to print the signature authority's name and sign. You should save this document, and then you must print the page and have the signature authority sign it. We'll assume that the signature authority has signed the document and that I have scanned it. Now I'm ready to upload the document to the system. To upload the certification, go to the Documents tab. Click on the Add Document button. Add the document name, Certification for Lake County. Select the document type, which is Application Certification. And then upload the document. It's very similar to attaching a document to an email. And lastly, identify the person who signed it. And save. Now we need to go back to the Program Requirements tab to submit the application. If you scroll down to the bottom of the page, you'll see that the Submit Application button has appeared. Click on this button when you're ready to submit your application to CalRecycle. After you submit the application, So as you can see, your application status now says submitted. After you submit the application, you will not be allowed to make changes to the information. You will be allowed to update documents until the application, you will be allowed to upload documents until the document due date. If you need to make changes to the application information, you must email or call CalRecycle staff. The contact information is in the footer of every page. We anticipate that the system will be available later this afternoon or tomorrow morning. If you're an existing used oil block grantee, you'll receive a notice of funds available via email. And I will now answer questions regarding the system and the application process. Someone wants to know if the PowerPoint presentation will be available online. And I guess program staff actually has already emailed that out, which was the version from the last webinar, but it's basically the same information. So if you still need that, you can contact your program advisor, aka your old grant manager.
It's Elaine Hussey, program manager. You said that they could do a partial, work on it, save it, and then submit it later. You just showed them doing the whole thing in one sitting and submitting. Could you indicate how they would save it and then submit it? Because you said once they submitted it, they couldn't make any changes.
Okay, each section has a save function. So when you've completed that section, you just hit save, and then you come back out here and you just log out. And then when you log back in, you can just continue where you left off. Okay. Another question is, can I upload all documents when I submit the application? Resolutions, letter of authorizations, etc. Yes, you can, and if you have those available, I suggest that you do it as soon as possible so they can be reviewed. There's no need to wait for the secondary due date. If you have everything, upload it at once. There's also an option to upload a draft resolution. That's one of the options. So if you are waiting until that secondary due date, we encourage you to go ahead and upload your draft. The next question is, will all documents for the application process be scanned, or will we need to send hard copies as well? No, you do not need to send your hard copies. Please upload your documents to the application system, and we'll review them in the system. Oh. The next question is asking about the program requirements section, if you can choose more than one option if you have a CCC and a curbside collection program. The third option actually is for those that have both. So each section in the program requirements, you should only pick one option. Okay, there's another question about the letter of designation. If the primary contact is designated, does that person now become the signature authority? And that's yes, or they can be referred to as the authorized designee, but basically it's the same thing. So a person, yes, can be a primary contact and have signature authority as long as the jurisdiction's resolution states that the title that they assign the signature authority can delegate their authority to someone else. Then that person creates a letter of designation delegating the person to which they want to also have that authority, and that's submitted prior to that person being able to exercise their authority. So you can designate somebody, but if we don't have a letter on file, they're not going to be allowed to sign off on anything. So that's all the questions we have so far. Is there anyone else that wants to submit something? Okay, we have another question. Once you have already clicked save, are you able to go back and save, fix any errors, updates, etc.? So you can log in and out of the system and make changes as long as you have not submitted your application. So you want to make sure everything's correct before you hit that submit button, because after that point, if there's any changes, then you'll have to email us and this site here, and we'll make the changes for you at that point.
Okay, it looks like we're running out of questions here. I want to thank everyone that has participated. Oops, we got one more.
Okay, we had a question about if you submit a letter of designation along with the application, can the designated authority person sign the application certification? Yes, they can. And when you click the button to create the application certification, no, I'm sorry, when you upload the document, it'll ask you who signed it, whether it's the signature authority, so that's the person named in the resolution, or if it's the authorized designee, which is the person in the letter. So you can indicate which person signed that. Okay, the next question is for letters of authorization, do we need an original letter from them? Can they email the letter to us to upload? So yes, your participants can email you the letters of authorization so that way you can upload them to the system. You do not need to send us an original copy. They're asking if you have to scan the document first in order to be able to upload it. Yes, you do. The letters require signatures, which means you have to print the document, sign, and then scan it in order for us to be able to see that signature. And you should also retain those hard copies in your program files. Okay, the next question is about publication material that says CIWMB. Do they need to stop using those materials once they've started the OPP cycle?
This is Calvin again. What basically said is you can go ahead and continue to burn through anything you have that has the old waste board on it, but as those supplies are used up, we ask that you switch over to CalRecycle. Okay? Thank you.
Okay, the next question is, once I sign in with the WebPass, I see options for BGR. When the new system is running, will there be different options for OPP? Yes, so essentially it's one system, one big system with different sections. So you'll be able to access your block grant reports and the OPP application, and then eventually the OPP reporting system will be accessible the same way. So it looks like that's the last question again, so we'll give it a minute to see if anybody else submits anything.
And we've also had requests before for some information regarding the data that's collected in the CCC information. So I'm going to turn that over to Emily here from our STAR group to say a few words on that.
Hi, I just want to let people know that the spreadsheets with used oil claims that we send out every year will be sent out to you this week. The database that gets updated, IMB is working on it. We have a little bit of a database switch this year, so it may take a little longer. Hopefully we'll get it out by next week at the latest. And again, if you have any questions, just email me. Thanks.
Okay, there's another question online. It says, how do we get a WebPass? So if you did not receive an email from program staff with the link, you can also find it from the used oil payment program page that we showed you how to find earlier. Oops. So you go to this website and it's pretty simple. You just sign up for your WebPass, and then you have to make sure that you follow the steps and go to your inbox and confirm your WebPass.
Will our UBG information be online as well, along with the new OPP. Actually, your old UBG information, used oil block grant information, is what is used to initially populate the oil payment program site. So just as Marissa was indicating earlier, when you go to to fill out your application, a lot of the information is probably already going to be there. And a lot of it's more of a confirmation basis on your part. So, yeah, a lot of that information will already be there.
Next question is, I'm new to the program. How can I confirm that I'm listed as the contact and that I have a web pass? Why don't you go ahead and send an email to the grant assistance inbox, which is right here. Tell me your name and what jurisdiction you're applying on behalf of, and I can check the system and see if you are in there. And then I'll provide you with the link to the web pass if needed. Okay, the next question is, we apply online, but you ask us to scan and upload the application with signatures. Isn't this duplication of effort? Why do we do this twice? So the person filling out the application may not be the signature authority. We're asking you to print the application certification and have your signature authority signed so that we know that that person is in fact authorizing the submittal of the information. And we need you to upload your scan resolutions, letters of authorizations, and letters of delegation so that we can see it and review it and make sure everyone's eligible to participate. So it's not really a duplication of information. One is, providing all the contact information and necessary information, and the second portion is just making sure everyone that's authorized is signing off on the information that you submitted.
Okay. Well, that looks like that's it for this webinar. I want to thank everybody that's participated. Again, this is kind of our first effort into this kind of activity. Those folks may remember it as part of the survey that went out a couple of months ago. We were asking questions as far as the use of webinar, especially to help those folks that have either time or budget constraints regarding attending the information exchanges and what have you. But we may also use this as an opportunity to share information in the future. Do we have one last one?
Hi, it looks like someone was trying to access the system, so it's not available yet, and we will be sending out an email when it is. You might just be logging into your block grant reporting. I'm not really sure what's going on there. But again, we haven't made the application to the used oil payment program available yet.
Okay, and again, that'll be going live probably later this afternoon or bright and early in the morning is when we anticipate it. So if there's no other questions, I want to thank everybody for participating. If you have any additional questions or want clarification on some of the things, I again would encourage you to send an email to grant administration, grant assistance, pardon me, and ask any questions you have. And of course, your friendly neighborhood grant manager / program advisor is always there to help. Alrighty. On behalf of CalRecycle, this is Calvin Young saying thank you.